In order of arrival, with the exception of Chair Murray and Vice Chair Collins, and ask that people keep their questioning to 5 minutes, except for the Chair and Vice Chair. And we will alternate between sides of the dais and sides of the aisle. So, Mr. Attorney General, we are now, as I said in my opening statement, painfully aware of the impacts of the Fiscal Responsibility Act and what that means. I cited the example of FBI in terms of the percentage cut, but what that actually means in terms of dollars. What will happen at the department, particularly to the law enforcement components, if it faces similar cuts in 2025?
Well, I obviously quite agree with you. Overall, as a consequence of FY 2024 budget, we anticipate needing to reduce a total of 4,813 positions. And that's not specifically about law enforcement, but I will move to that in a moment. The 2025 budget that we're requesting seeks to restore 1,409 positions. Specifically, with respect to law enforcement, between 23 and 24, we lost 200 agents in the positions in the FBI. Our request is an increase of 217 agents, which, is, as you can see, is only 17 more agents than we had in FY 2023. For the U.S. Marshal Service, we lost 72 Deputy U.S. Marshals positions. We are asking now for an increase of 51, which includes what we need for purposes of the increased requirements for security for the justices. The U.S. attorneys between FY 23 and FY 24, which of course bring our criminal prosecutions, we lost 188 positions for assistant U.S. attorneys. We are asking for 50 over FY 24, which of course does not make up that number. I can go through the whole number if you'd like, each of you'd like, but you can see that we are, in most cases, we are not going to be able to make up even for what we lost between 23 and 24, but we are doing our best to be faithful to the congressional statute and to the bipartisan agreement.
Well, I appreciate that. I think as we know, the challenge is that there are very real impacts for these budget cuts, and they will have an effect on the public and on our ability to address all of the issues that the Justice Department is working on. Senator Moran and I both mentioned in our opening statements, as did you, the continuing fight against the opioid epidemic, substance misuse, the drug cartels. I continue to be very concerned about fentanyl use and poisoning. New Hampshire has lost too many people to fentanyl overdoses. Can you talk a little bit about DOJ's efforts to interdict these drugs and efforts to find a way to prosecute those responsible?
Yes, Senator. I have said, and I deeply mean this, that fentanyl is the deadliest drug threat that this country has ever faced. I've met with families at the DEA whose children, whose teenagers, whose infants, whose grandparents have died, mostly not even knowing that what they're taking is fentanyl, thinking it's another kind of prescription pill that they were able to get over the internet. We don't even refer to this as overdoses anymore, we refer to this as drug poisoning, because that's what it is. So we are facing this with the urgency it requires. And we are trying to dismantle the entire network. So the network begins in China. It begins with the precursor companies that sell precursor chemicals that are necessary to make fentanyl through Mexico. So we have charged a number of those companies. We have indicted a number of their officials. We have even been able to snare some of them, the officials, when traveling outside of China. The Treasury Department has sanctioned those companies so people cannot deal with them. Some of them are regular prescription drug companies, so sanctions are quite important. Then we move to Mexico and the importation of these precursors. I've traveled to Mexico myself 3 times, the Deputy Attorney General, I believe at least 3 times. Many other parts of our law enforcement apparatus have done the same to persuade them to cut off access to these precursors, to register them, and they have done some of what we've asked, not all, but that has been important. Then the chemicals are made into fentanyl in Mexico, primarily in laboratories. We have, again, on my visits, we have urged the Mexican government, and particularly the Mexican military, the Army, and the Marines who are responsible, have taken over this task to destroy those labs, and they have done some, but not as much as we would like. We have indicted the principal cartel leaders, including the sons of El Chapo, the so-called Chapitos of the Sinaloa cartel, as well as leaders of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. Those two are the principal drivers of fentanyl trafficking in the United States. On one of my travels, I urged the Mexican government and the Attorney General to approve the extradition, and in fact, they did approve the extradition of Ovidio Guzman Lopez, who was the lead Chapito. Then,
Mr. Attorney General, I know you could probably go on, which is very helpful. We would like to talk all day about what's being done to address this. I'm out of time, but I also have one very brief follow-up, and that is, you mentioned going after the precursors in China.
Yes.
Are you seeing any difference at all since President Biden and Xi signed their agreement around dealing with those drugs back last fall? Has there been any change in the way China is reacting?
Yeah, we've seen some, but nothing like what we want or expect. The president says the words are nice, but we need to verify, and at this point, we don't have very much verification.
Thank you. Senator Moran.
Chairman Shaheen, thank you. Let me visit with you for a moment, Attorney General, about